So allow yourself to evolve as an illustrator, and you will naturally have a style that emerges as you go along if you're making the work. Hey guys, it's me. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend and that you're having a great start to your week. It is a holiday here today, and as a freelancer, I forgot it's a holiday, so I've booked things today and I'm working. So anyway, happy Victoria Day to people in Canada and to the rest of the world. I hope you are having an amazing start to your week. Anyway, this is going to be a super quick little episode because I just got off the phone with Spanish illustrator Magos, and a lot of you probably know who he is, and we just recorded the first Making Friends kind of interview format chit chat, and basically I interviewed Magos and we talked for an hour and a half. I'm going to see if I can edit it back to an hour, but it's going to be really hard, and I'm hopefully going to be able to produce that podcast or vidcast video for you guys to see next Monday. I'm super excited about it. We talked about a lot of things, and one thing I really wanted to focus on was working while traveling, because that's something Magos does a lot about. And so tune in next week and I will hopefully have that video kind of assembled together and ready for you guys to watch. Super excited about it, and let's just get into some of the questions that you guys have been asking this week. And I'm just going to quickly post that and give you something, because I like to at least do something every Monday so you guys have something to dig into and start your weeks with. So why don't we just get right into it. So last week I was just asking a little bit about what you guys thought about the video format versus maybe going to a more audio-only podcast format. And a lot of you guys chimed in, and I appreciate that. And it sounds like anyone who did chime in wants to keep a video format or appreciates the video format. And so we're going to stick with that. So thanks guys for weighing in. And thanks for saying hi. We have people from New York, Barcelona, Spain, Seattle, Quebec, and many others. So thanks for just letting me know where you're coming from. I always am interested in knowing who's listening beyond just the numbers and the statistics that I can see here in the dashboard. And just knowing who you are, where you're at is both interesting and encouraging to me. So let's just start with some of your questions, and I'll just kind of answer these lightning round style. So Sonali asks, she's in New York. When you start out as an illustrator, you tend to have many styles. How do you decide which one you want to go ahead? So that's very true. When you first start, because you're inexperienced and you're just learning about yourself as an artist and about illustration as a practice, you're not going to have a clearly defined style, or it's not very likely that you'll have a clearly defined style. So you almost by necessity are experimenting in different styles. You know, maybe you're working a lot in Illustrator doing geometric vector designs, and then maybe you're doing more, stuff with Photoshop brushes in Photoshop, or maybe you're using Procreate only, or maybe you're using cutouts and collage with like actual pieces of paper and stuff. And I highly recommend that if you're starting out, don't lock yourself in. Do a lot of stuff, and obviously all those things will inform one another. You're going to learn something from each one of those disciplines that you can bring to any other one of them. So if you like collage and you like working in Photoshop, I think those are very compatible processes or styles to work in. And just for instance, so experiment and just let yourself learn from what happens when you work in all these different styles. And of course, there's not just different techniques and like software that inform your style. There's also like how you do a specific style within Photoshop. Maybe things are more painterly or things are more abstract. And so, yes, experiment both with your tools, experiment both with your styles and approach. How do you draw your figures? How do you do lettering? What kind of colors to use? How do you know eventually which ones you want to go ahead with? Well, I think for me, I can answer how that happens with me, and it's very organically. You've heard the expression barking up the wrong tree. So you might start off working in one style that you think you like, but you don't seem to go anywhere with it. So maybe you're barking up the wrong tree. Then you find a different tree to bark up, and maybe once you bark up that, you're finding that's where all the squirrels are, and that's where the things that you really you're seeing some results and a good response to it, maybe from clients or from friends, or just in terms of what you like. So it takes some trial and error, and obviously there is some decisiveness in terms of knowing, like just deciding like, I like all of these styles, but I really do need to button down or focus in on one style. That's going to be a matter of your own discernment. You're going to need to ask yourself what kind of style works the best for the kind of illustration you want to do. Like, is it efficient? Can you make it quickly enough? Or is it too detailed, and every time you do take on a commission, you're going to spend too long working on this kind of style because it's so tedious, right? So there's a practical element, but then there's a sort of like, do you like it? Are you drawn to it? Are you drawn to something that has lots of vibrant colors, or something that's more muted and minimal in colors? Those are things like really based on what you prefer, and there's no real right or wrong there. You might, if you can't choose one specific style to do for everything, maybe you choose a specific style for different kinds of things. So a style that you use for concept work might be very graphic and minimal, and something you do for more kids' book illustrations, for instance, maybe those are a little bit more elaborate and textured or something like that. So it's okay and totally possible to tailor different styles to different contexts and different kinds of illustration. And really, the thing you want to do overall is allow yourself the fact that time and experience kind of helps you figure out a lot of your questions of style quite naturally. As long as you're doing work, you're making it, eventually you'll have enough work to look at as a set and say, this is more what I want to do, this is what I want to do more of, and this is, on the other hand, a little bit more, this isn't working as well for me anymore. So allow yourself to evolve as an illustrator, and you will naturally have a style that emerges as you go along if you're making the work. And along the way, just there is some element of being decisive and saying, this is what I'm going to focus on, even though I like all this other stuff. This is the thing that I'm most natural at, or the thing that people keep asking me to do. And so you can just use these cues from either inside you or from outside reactions and say, okay, I'm going to chase this trail for now, just because of the way all signs are pointing. So I hope that helps, Sonali. Thank you for your question. And another question comes from Chris T, and she asks how I set my prices. So she says, is it depending on how much time I spend on the job, or is it how big the company is, or how many uses they give it, like basically how many times they use the image, or in how many different kinds of applications they use it in? Or is there an average price in the industry? So the answer is, I guess it's a little bit of all of the above. I have a book that I refer to called Graphic Artists Guild Book of Guide to Ethical Pricing, or something like that. I'll leave a link in the notes. And that book has been critical for me, just to give me a baseline price for different kinds of illustration jobs, and it has these tables in it that show, like, if you're doing an illustration for a magazine, it says what size of a magazine is it? Is it really small with a small distribution? Is it medium or large? And then it gives you price ranges, and they're very wide ranges, like anywhere from like $500 to $10,000 in some cases. And so you can look at a table like that and say, well, I'm not inexperienced, and you know, I have some experience, so I'm probably not at the $500 range. So maybe I'm more at the $1,000 range. Like, you can kind of place yourself in this range based on your own personal assessment of where you are. So there is pricing guides that help you determine sort of what's the range or ballpark of prices for a given kind of illustration. I highly recommend you get yourself that book, because at least it gives you a starting point. You also have to do this thing early on as a freelancer where you calculate what you need to earn as a living to make a living. And basically, you factor in things like, how much does your rent cost or your mortgage? What is your heating bill? You know, your grocery bill. Basically, what is your cost of living? And then what is the cost to operate your business? So what are your subscriptions that you need, like Creative Cloud and Harvest or FreshBooks or those kinds of things. So you need to set up, what does it cost to live? What does it cost to run your business? And then you can say, what extra money do I want for pleasure, such as you know, going on vacation, or, you know, buying clothes that I like and things like that. And then you set yourself a salary, right? What kind of salary? Another way of just a more simpler way of asking is, like, if you were to get a job with an employer, what salary would you want from your employer, either as a minimum or as an ideal, right? You don't want to be like, oh, I want to make $1 million. It's not that simple. You have to, you know, be realistic about your skill level, your region where you live, and kind of what the going rate is in the industry. So set yourself a sort of living salary, and then you start to break that down by how much you need to earn per month, and then how many jobs you think you need to get to make that much per month, and then kind of it gets easier and easier to break that down by the hour. So one thing I should add here is that it's your salary plus the cost of doing your business, and that's what you're going to base your hourly rate, basically. So you may say, let's just say that if you were employed full-time somewhere, you wanted to earn $45,000. So that's what you would be paid as an employee, but you're not also paying for how to run that business. So your employer would be paying for things like paper and cost of electricity to run the business, and for trips to other cities to go see conferences, or gas mileage, and all those things that as employees you would take for granted or have taken care of for you. You want to factor in that on top of what you would want to earn as a salary that you could live off of. So it would be $45,000 plus $5,000 to run your business, or $10,000, or whatever it is. And it sounds like a lot of money. You may be like, well, like, I would never be able to earn $70,000 from an employer as an illustrator. First of all, don't sell yourself short. But second of all, more importantly, is you are an illustrator plus a business. And so someone's got to pay for that business. It's either going to be out of your own pocket, the pocket that you would be pulling money out of to live off of and feed yourself and your family and enjoy your life, or it's going to be paid for by clients who pay your fees and stuff like that. So you want to do your best to set your business up so that your business is being supported by your fees and not by your own cost of living account, if you will. So I do have a sort of base hourly rate that I use when all I know is the time that a job will take, or that a job might take, or if I don't know how long it will take. Sometimes it's helpful to know what I charge per hour. And then there's the idea of a day rate, which is usually a day's worth of time, maybe 8 hours or 7 hours, times your hourly rate. But sometimes that ends up being a lot higher than someone will pay for a day. So then you scale it back a little bit. You kind of do a volume discount there. So that's kind of at its basic. You know what your hourly rate and your day rate is. But then when it comes to pricing for some jobs, it really is a matter of how big the company is, what they're going to be using it for, and if it's something that they're going to be reselling. Like if you're making art for that a company is going to put on a t-shirt and sell and make a lot of profit from, you want to do your best to try and get a royalty scheme in there so that you can benefit from the dividends, that you can receive the dividends that your artwork is getting for that company as much as possible. If you're making greeting cards or any kind of licensed products, that's where you want to get into royalties and ask them to give you a cut. And usually it's somewhere between 5 and 10%. And you always want to ask for an advance against royalties at the same time, and that ensures that you get paid for at least part of your work. Let's just say you make greeting cards for a company and they offer you 5% royalty on the wholesale price. So that means every card is sold for $250. That means I don't know what 5% of $250 is, but that small, a few cents or whatever per card that they sell is going to come back to you. And eventually you'll start seeing that add up, but you want to guarantee that you'll get more than a pittance for those for the cards that you designed. So you also want the client to express confidence in their ability to sell your work and actually earn you those royalties. So you want to maybe say, I want a $500 advance on this greeting card. And once the card makes $500, the 5% of the wholesale price has been actually realized and sold, and the company has recovered that $500 they paid you. At that point, those royalties can start going to you, and it becomes a nice way of passive income. So that's another way of setting prices. And I think when it comes to actually getting into like larger jobs, you're talking about, how you're going to use an image. Is it going to appear in all these outdoor advertisements? And then there's going to be some, on use on social media or in digital advertising. And then there's something that they might use on in media like TV or something like that. All those things, I think, once you get into that territory, you can do your best to try and express that you want these things to factor into your price. But that's where you get into an agent really helping you out with those things. So until I got an agent, I wasn't so confident in pricing my work according to how it would be used or all those kinds of things. But like I said, that book, the Graphic Artists Guild book, is really helpful in giving you a little bit of a sense of how to price in terms of usage and stuff like that. So please check that out. Pricing is such a huge thing, and I think there could be entire courses taught on it. And even then, it's going to be a bit of black magic and subjective calls. But it really does come down ultimately to what do you need to earn to make a living? What's your hour worth? And how low are you willing to go for a job that you really want to do? And so, Chris, I hope that answers your question about that. And let me know if there's something that this question or answer kind of prods you to ask deeper about, and I'd be happy to try to go deeper with that. Another couple questions here. So Anya asks, she's talking about the sketches I showed for that series of illustrations I shared a couple episodes ago. I think it was in episode 13. And so she's saying, I love how you're able to distill the essence from each scene and simplify very complicated compositions. Do you still keep a traditional sketchbook? Because she's seeing all the sketches I did in Procreate. So my answer to that is I I have a sketchbook. I've always kept a Moleskine sketchbook like this, but it usually ends up just being more of a notebook, and I intersperse just even just like random doodles on it while I'm on the call, right? Like, so I don't have like a sketchbook in the traditional sense. Maybe there is no sketchbook in the traditional sense, but I do always have a physical piece of paper and a pencil, and I make marks in it. And sometimes I draw from my life, sometimes I doodle from my head, sometimes I just write, 16 pages of thoughts in diary format. And so that is really, I guess it's always been a part of my process, but in terms of the actual sketches that I create for work is now almost all digital. Okay, finally, Marilyn Freigel. I answered one of her questions a few episodes back about agents, and she kind of was wondering further about needing work visas to work internationally. And so that's a really important detail that I'm not well versed in, but what I believe I understand is that as long as I'm working from my home country, I can work for any client in any other country. And that I think that's, as far as I know, at least in Canada, I can do that. The problem arises when you live abroad and work from there, because in order to work from somewhere else, maybe you need to be a resident. But certainly I know that for working in the United States, to do any activity that earns me a living, I would need a work visa. And so, yeah, I think if you're just working from home for an international client, nothing to worry about. Just make sure you understand what taxes you may or may not owe, and certainly research whether there are some visa considerations or duties and or other kind of situations that might come along. And of course, in your home country, understand the tax laws of your own country. So in Canada, that's the CRA. In the US, that's the IRS. Make sure you go to their website and look up working for clients outside of your jurisdiction, and you'll find out that way what you're allowed to do. So anyway, I hope this little quickie here was informative for you guys. I wanted to give you something, and next week I'm going to really work hard to make this interview / chat that I had with Magos available. And again, it's amazing. You guys are going to love it. So my name's Tom Froese. I'm an illustrator in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm answering your questions about illustration. I call this channel Making Friends. You can find me at tomfroese.com, on Instagram at Mr. Tom Froese, and a few other places. The links are down below. Of course, I need your questions to keep making this vidcast. So please ask your questions, leave them in the comments, and I will definitely be getting to them in the future. So as always, guys, have a great week. Keep making great work, and keep asking great questions. I'll see you next week.